Hello and welcome everyone to the 2020 Annual General Meeting of Oxfordshire Association for the Blind. Some of you may know me. My name is Guy Lawful and I'm Chair of OAB Trustees. Thank you all for taking the time to attend today. I appreciate these are strange times. When Helen and I were discussing earlier in the year the subject of having a new format for the AGM, we never expected that it would be on the format that we have ended up with today. It has taken a great deal of work behind the scenes so that we can get this meeting running today, and I must extend my thanks to Mark Upton for facilitating the AGM. He has done a tremendous job to get us here, despite having no broadband at home for the past few days. Please do bear with us. It is possible that there may be some technical hitches along the way. We are all at home ourselves, but we will cope with whatever we can and deal with it then. Apologies first off for saying that you will be mainly hearing from me today as chair of OAB, but we also have two other speakers addressing the meeting, Robin Birch in his role as treasurer and Helen Roseblade, our director. In terms of apologies for attendance of today's meeting, there will be a full list available with the minutes of the meeting. Our President, Professor Adrian Hill, has asked me to read out his report on his behalf today, although he may be with us in the audience. So here we go. This has been a hugely challenging year for OAB, with the many constraints on our delivering services due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I would therefore like to take the opportunity of thanking all of our great team of staff and volunteers, including the trustees, not only for maintaining the delivery of most of our services, but also for introducing a new and very much appreciated telephone befriending service. The latter having proved to be especially popular with many existing and new clients. I am particularly impressed that all this has been achieved by our staff team working from home under the exceptional guidance of our new director, Helen Roseblade. Helen joined us soon after the last AGM, and she has demonstrated considerable accomplishment and flexibility in circumstances that no one could have predicted in the short time that she has led the team. Of course, since lockdown, we have not been able to use the Camperley Resource Centre at our Bradbury Lodge headquarters, but we can assure everyone that this will reopen as soon as health and safety instructions permit. Many will recall that 7 years ago, the trustees set a very ambitious strategic plan which was to come to fruition in the year 2020. This was our part of the World Health Organization mission known as Vision 2020, which was aimed at reducing the disability from sight loss. I'm pleased to say that we achieved most of the objectives we set ourselves in 2013, and this was due to all the hard work of the staff team and our dedicated volunteers. A big thank you to all. Despite the constraints of COVID-19 and its severe funding implications, we shall soon be setting out our next 5-year plan of strategic objectives. But this will only be achievable if we have the resources with which to do it. The OAB needs around £300,000 a year to operate, and for this we rely on donations and legacies as well as grants from trust funds, each of which are in short supply during the present times of considerable financial constraint. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has given generously to keep us afloat through donations, legacies and grants. I ask you please to continue with your support for a very worthy service to all people in Oxfordshire who are blind or visually impaired. We can only exist with your support and generosity. I wish everyone an especially happy and successful year ahead. Many thanks to our President, Professor Adrian Hill, for his report. And now on to the 2019 minutes. I won't be reading out the minutes of the previous AGM held on the 10th of September 2019, but copies are available for you to view as part of this meeting. I'd like to conduct a vote on approval of these minutes as a true record of the meeting. Approval has been proposed by Leslie Rubies and seconded by Margaret Simpson. Please use the raise hand icon to indicate your approval of these minutes. I will now wait for Mark to let me know once he's finished the count.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, Mark. So before I deliver my report as chair of OAB, there's a few thanks that are in order. Thanks go to my fellow trustees for their support over my first year as chair. I believe that we function together well as a board and executing our prime duty of being collectively responsible for the continued success of OAB. We strive to provide as much support and guidance as possible for Helen and the team, who are at the sharp end of delivering the services of which OAB is so proud. I also want to give many thanks to Helen and the entire OAB team of staff and volunteers for their outstanding efforts, achievements and formidable resilience during these very unsettling times. It makes me very proud to lead an organisation that comprises such amazingly dedicated and capable people. Before going into detail, I want to show you one of a series of videos that we have been using to promote the work of OAB. Initial filming on these took place a couple of years ago, with production being completed towards autumn 2019.
Oxfordshire Association for the Blind has changed my life and I couldn't be happier.
Charity's done a great deal for me, they're terrific.
Without them, I don't think I would have got this far.
Oxfordshire Association for the Blind is the county charity for visually impaired people in Oxfordshire. It aims to enable visually impaired people to live as independently as possible.
It can be an isolating world if you've got sight loss, but meeting people who have it too makes you feel that you're not alone.
I've been registered blind for over 10 years and the charity really helped me, particularly early on, providing sort of practical advice and support.
We offer emotional support in the form of counselling, telephone support, equipment for sale and for loan, social groups so that people can meet other visually impaired people. We offer involvement in sports.
I get to do sports with other blind children.
I like playing whistle cricket.
It gives me independent. There's always someone there if you need to talk to somebody.
I've really appreciated being able to join in and make friends.
If I had not had the help from the charity, I would not have been able to continue working.
The charity has helped me to own my disability and really get some more confidence, which is passed on to other areas of my life.
You can have a great life after sight loss. You've just got to change things around a little bit and be ready to ask for some help when you need it.
You can do a lot more than you think you can do, and you can be independent and take a full part in life generally.
That video is one of a series of 4, with the other 3 focusing on the individual stories of some OAB service users. They are all available on our website or on our YouTube channel. Many thanks go to Morgan Optometry for funding these and to Bounce Video for filming and production. So on to the key events of this year. There have been a few changes in personnel during the year, which I shall briefly cover. I was elected as chair at the last AGM. At that meeting, David Waugh stepped down as both chair and as a trustee. Gurjeet Jutley, consultant ophthalmic surgeon at Oxford Eye Hospital, was elected as a new trustee. We appointed Helen Rosebraid as director, and Helen joined us in December 2019. The contracts of Nathan Tree, client advice officer, and Laura Finnis, Children and Young People's Coordinator and Volunteer Coordinator, have been made permanent. We've also appointed Jill Loveday as a volunteer counsellor, as a start point for meeting a much needed gap in OAB services. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on all aspects of the organisation, from funding to service delivery. It was especially affected our ability to deliver much needed face-to-face support to people who are living with sight loss in Oxfordshire. I'm very proud of the response from everyone involved at OAB to the increased challenges presented by COVID, and again would like to express my thanks to Helen, the staff and volunteers for their exceptional hard work under extreme circumstances. Many changes were needed in our approach. These include the closure of Bradbury Lodge to both staff and visitors, although depending on the prevailing conditions, we hope to be able to welcome visitors again sometime in 2021. While the office has been closed, all staff have been working their normal hours, but this has been undertaken from home. And in order to facilitate home working, a new cloud IT and phone system was researched and implemented. I'll leave the specifics of service delivery to Helen to report, but I would like to briefly note some of the work the OAB has undertaken. We conducted a major telephone contact and support project across our many service users as possible. We advised local authorities on some specific areas of their COVID planning. We've collaborated with and trained some of the staff of other organisations who were providing a COVID response in the community. This focused on the additional issues facing people living with sight loss during lockdown and when social distancing. We have undertaken development of an ongoing telephone support project, which has been made possible by National Lottery funding. Away from COVID, although still significantly impacted by it, we have explored and increased our usage of digital media as a communication tool. There is an ongoing revision of the OAB website. Take a look at www.oxeyes.org.uk and see what you think. We have a greatly increased presence on social media, and we use this to promote stories and activities from around Oxfordshire, as well as interesting articles from other organisations involved within the world of sight loss. We have made several appearances on local radio, both promoting our services and thanking our fabulous volunteers. We also produced an ad that ran on Jack FM, for which we won free airtime, and we'd like to play that now.
Oxfordshire Association for the Blind has changed my life, and I couldn't be happier.
I get to do sports with other blind children.
There's always someone there if you need to talk.
Being able to join in and make friends.
You can be independent and take a full part in life generally.
Oxfordshire Association for the Blind offers tailored support to anyone living with sight loss. For information, advice or just to chat, call 01865 725595 or find out more about us at oxeyes.org.uk.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Moving on to funding, as everyone's aware, we can only continue to provide services if the funds are available to pay the underlying costs of the delivery. Staff at OAB have really gone all out to raise funds in addition to performing their day-to-day roles. Most are now involved in making written applications to trust funds, grant-making bodies and councils for greatly needed funding to continue our work. Many of these have borne fruit, and we will continue along these lines where we can. Since the last AGM, we have been fortunate to have received some very generous personal donations from supporters, some of which stretch into the thousands of pounds. And we are very grateful for all personal donations. And if anyone in the audience today has made a personal donation to OAB, my sincere thanks to you. We've also been notified of several legacies for which we are thankful. For those who are unaware, these are sums very kindly left to us in someone's will when they pass away. If anyone here today would like information on how to arrange this, please contact a member of OAB staff. Notification of a legacy, though, is not the same as receipt of the funds. The money from legacies can take quite a while to arrive into the OAB account. As an example of this, OAB was informed of a major legacy in February 2019. This legacy involved the sale of a house and some shares. After much communication between OAB and the various solicitors involved, we are yet to receive any funds from this legacy, but look forward to doing so at some point. Unfortunately, all of the events that we had planned to take part in during 2020 have been cancelled or so significantly altered that it made it impossible for us to attend. These include Bike Oxford, the John Radcliffe Abseil, the On-Form Sculpture Exhibition, and the Oxford Open Doors Weekend. All of these were events where plans have been made to promote OAB, raise awareness and raise funds. Just to mention, there is one new way to donate to OAB. You may have seen this notified in our newsletter. It is now possible to donate by text. Anyone can simply text OAB to 70460 to donate £5. If you'd like more information on donating to OAB in whatever form, please speak to a member of OAB staff. Moving on to our plans for the upcoming year, again, I don't want to step on Helen's toes, but I do briefly want to mention a few areas. Our main priority is the continuation of our high level of support for everyone living with sight loss, albeit currently delivered through remote activity. We firmly believe in increasing our community engagement across the entire county of Oxfordshire. And we are also looking to increase digital engagement, along with training people to enable them to take advantage of this. And finally, we're looking at a diversification and modernisation of our fundraising capability. Thank you very much for listening to me today. You've heard more than enough from me, so I shall now pass over to Robin Birch, our Treasurer, so he can deliver his financial report.
Chair, distinguished guests and members of the meeting, it's my great pleasure to come back to you after a year, during which I thought at the beginning we might very well be at risk of foundering, because you may remember, if you were at last year's AGM, that it really was very difficult indeed, and the financial situation had deteriorated really rather badly. But things have looked up, and you will have seen, or you will see if you have a copy of the accounts, some useful material on this. Before I mention anything else, I will just draw your attention to what always first catches the eye, both of chairs and of treasurers, which is the independent examiner's statement on page 7, which in slightly complicated account speak gives us a clean bill of health. So we are in good order as an organisation financially. Now, the next thing to say is that already, Chair, you and others have mentioned the great difficulties we've been under, which of course have not been helped by the arrival of COVID. It's very much to the credit of the organisation that it's kept going continuously during the COVID lockdown, unlike some organisations I'm aware of. And the result is that we have managed to maintain our services to people in the county, and also continue our fundraising activities, which of course have been exceptionally necessary. Now you will see, if you turn to page 6 of the accounts, and then page 8, which I will cross-refer to in a moment, there has been a great improvement since last year, but we still have a long way to go. I do want to thank people, as has already been said, for the many individual acts of generosity and support, and also the various trusts and foundations which we have approached, which have also responded. The result has been that in the last year we made a small surplus on unrestricted funds of £5,439, having made a loss, a net deficit in the previous year on that heading of £117,878. Now, these figures have been achieved partly through increased income and partly through reduced expenditure. I hesitate to say that one of the things that helped was that we didn't have a director in post for 6 months. The rest of the organisation fought on manfully and functioned very well, but we didn't have anybody until December, from the time that Claire had left 6 months earlier. And you will see, if you turn to page 8, the difference between the year under report and the previous year. You'll see at the top line, donations and legacies amount to over £145,000 out of a total of funds of £210,000, whereas in the previous year, the unrestricted funds were £89,000, Restricted funds have continued, have improved as well, but it's not quite so notable. But for those who may not be aware of this, restricted funds are funds given to us for specific purposes of service delivery. But the unrestricted funds are what fund the operation of the organisation. So it's particularly important to keep those up. You will see, if you look further down the page, expenditure on raising funds, that means staff. And you'll see that the cost of this was considerably down on the previous year, which is the factor I mentioned, that we were short of staff, in particular of a director, for 6 months. That has now been put right. But it does mean that we've come out of the year in remarkably good order, with a net loss, but of £13,000 on all our funds for the year, as opposed to a loss of £123,000 in the year before. So we have pulled the ship off the rocks. At the last annual meeting, I reported that we had consulted an insolvency practitioner as to what we should do if the ship was in fact held below the waterline. And his report to me basically said, it's not quite as bad as you think, and you're not quite at that dangerous position yet. But a year ago, instead of having the 6 months reserves we ought to have in order to guarantee that we are adequately supported, we had just about 3 months. It is now 4 months. That doesn't sound a lot, but it represents a considerable net increase in the funding available. And so that is good news. But of course, there is much work to be done. I can tell you, leaping ahead, as it were, to what we will deal with next year, that so far we've acquired considerably more funds in the first 4 months of the year, 5 months of the year, sorry, than we had expected. And so we've made a good start on getting a full amount of money for the current year, although there's a lot of work to be done. I should say that although it should cost £300,000, as Adrian said, to run the organisation at full blast. We reckon to do a reasonable job on something over £200,000, in the region of £220,000 or £220,000. That is what we are currently aiming at. And so far, we've done well. And there's a considerable amount of fundraising to be done in the rest of the present year. But I think probably it would be better if I left to Helen to talk further about what's to be done there. But I would say that one of the unfortunate consequences of COVID has been that trusts are suddenly finding themselves under huge pressure to support very large numbers of voluntary organisations. So I think funds will be even harder to come by in the coming years than they have been in the past year. So be prepared for considerable effort and appeal on behalf of this charity for support from everybody who is able to give it. As has been said, we've got several legacies in the pipeline which should come to fruition and will help us when they do, but one should not rest too heavily on great expectations, and that's why we have worked very strictly in terms of what we have received. I would very much like to end by thanking once again all the staff and fellow trustees for all that's been done to advance the situation in the past year, and to say that the effort must not cease. We still have a long way to go. And last year, I made, if I remember, a surprisingly impassioned appeal to the members present for any support they could give directly to assist. And a number of you did this, and it did help greatly that was the case. I would like to venture to repeat that appeal and to say to members of the association, whatever they can give to support us in the next year will be extremely welcome and will help us to build the future of the association. So please help us if you can, and to the extent you can, and that will be much appreciated. Well, I think that brings me to the end of my report, Chair. I think the only thing I have to do is to invite the meeting to approve the reappointment of the independent examiner. I can give you a testimonial to the independent examiner, Nicola Cadwallader, who has been doing a sterling job for us on this and is well worthy of reappointment. And I would hope that that would be acceptable to the meeting. And I believe that I have a proposer for her in the shape of Margaret Simpson, and that Leslie Ruby is in secondment of that. So may I put to the meeting that we, on the basis of Margaret's and Leslie's proposal and secondment, we should reappoint Nicola to be our external examiner for next year as well. Would people please raise their hands to signify that they are voting for this if they are?
Thanks, Robin.
I'm trying to raise my own hand and I'm doing like this.
Okay, Mark, have you got that?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much for that report, Robin. We shall now pass over to Helen, our director, to give her report.
Right. I shan't be able to look at you very well because I'm going to have to use the paper copy. Never mind. So this morning on the way to the office, I caught the beginning. In 431 BC, Pericles gave a funeral oration to his fellow Athenians, which has been celebrated as one of the finest speeches ever delivered. Within 2 years, he himself was dead from the plague. So I'm not going to try too hard to make a good speech this afternoon. This time last year, we all met at the North Oxfordshire Association, and I was in the audience, looking forward with enthusiasm to the challenge ahead. 12 months on and 9 months in post, I have no regrets at all about having joined OAB last December. I've immensely enjoyed the challenge. However, to say that things have not gone quite as I planned would be an understatement. First of all, I must pay tribute to the staff, trustees and volunteers who kept OAB running for the half year when there was no director in post at all, and who have been a team in the truest sense ever since I arrived. Without them all, you would not have a service. And I'd just like to give you the opportunity to thank them all now. You are muted, I hope, so just wave your hands to say thank you. Silent applause for all the staff, volunteers. Well done. That was big applause. Thank you, everybody. So, the first 3 months of my tenure were largely spent in planning, and the planning of course, has not come to fruition, or not yet. But I would like to tell you about what has happened since COVID-19 struck in mid-March and our lives changed so dramatically. First of all, a decision was made that although we had to close the resource centre and offices, we would not furlough the staff. They would need to work from home, but we would find alternative ways of serving blind and partially sighted community in Oxfordshire. We needed to be flexible, responsive and proactive to do this, and I believe that we have been successful in this. Our priority was to make sure that all our members were safe and well, and offer them any help that we were able to provide. And we were able to do this by turning to a technology with which they were all familiar, the telephone. We could offer them a regular phone call to reduce their isolation, and we could put them in touch with other charities locally who were able to help with their practical needs. We set out to ring everyone, starting with those with whom we would normally be in frequent contact and those who would miss us the most, such as those who would have a home visitor or come to a club, and the children and their families who we support. And we moved on to contact everyone who receives the newsletter. And the phone calls were very well received. Most people were glad that we had called, even if they were already well supported. One described the voicemail that had been left for her as like a warm hug. About 10% of those we contacted were keen to have a regular follow-up call to help keep them company. And we were also able to help people to access food deliveries and even dog walkers. For this massive ring round, we have used the time and the skills of our frontline staff and our team of trained volunteers. And we've taken the opportunity to update our information as well. So now we have a much more accurate record of our members' contact details. The helpline, of course, was still in place, and our volunteer counsellor, Jill, moved smoothly to a telephone service. But so often people ringing the helpline would normally be invited to come and visit Bradbury Lodge and try out equipment. So gradually, we've begun to experiment with taking equipment to people at home, being very careful with a protocol of social distancing, hand sanitising, mask wearing and so on, simply leaving the equipment on their doorstep and then talking through its setup and use by telephone. And all the while we cannot open the resource centre, we shall continue to try to develop this service. The clubs were unable to meet in person, but we were able to set up group telephone calls so that they could all talk to one another at the same time, and that was a useful stopgap. But it is still a matter of concern that we are not in a position where the clubs can meet personally. My thanks go to all the club leaders who have made such an effort to continue supporting their members. I can even see today that Linda's brought a guest with her to her house to be at the meeting, which is so typical of how good our club leaders are at supporting their individuals. Thanks, Linda. The site advisory desk at the hospital also had to be paused, and I'm very conscious that this vital service needs to be reinstated as soon as possible. The newsletter continued as normal, and we felt it even more important to be able to communicate that way with those of our members who might be isolated at home. And there were also internal initiatives such as Mark's remarkable Assistance from a Distance campaign, in which he reached out to local individuals and organisations to help them understand how they could help people with a visual impairment to overcome the difficulties of moving around in the community under lockdown. If you're interested in that, you can find more about it on the website. But the question then was how to fund our work. A number of funding applications which were in process in March were halted by the funders, who were refocusing on COVID-19 emergency funding. But COVID-19 did provide a number of unexpected but welcome opportunities, and the most significant has been the National Lottery grant. To obtain that, we had to formalise the outreach work that we had started and set out how we were going to continue it over the period from August 2020 to February 2021. And the panels who reviewed our application were sufficiently impressed to agree to fully fund this work for that period and encourage us to apply for further funding to develop it afterwards. So, our financial situation is at present as good as we might have hoped for, although the future looks extremely challenging, as most of the trust funds to which we might have applied have redirected their resources to immediate emergency funding and will be depleted. So we are reinstating the fundraising subcommittee now to plan the best approach for the coming year. That's my first job after this meeting. Looking ahead, from a service point of view, we have two major objectives: to develop our services across the county and to increase our volunteer force. We had begun to make inroads into the first of these before lockdown, but they've necessarily had to be postponed. So we'd begun a regular library day at Henley once a month to serve the people in that area. And we'd planned a monthly coffee morning in Banbury, which Janet was going to start on the 1st of April. But you will do it one day, won't you, Janet? Yes. Our telephone outreach has enabled us to be in touch with more people in these areas, so we hope to take these projects forward and renew our lunch and coffee clubs in other areas as soon as it's safe to do so. But we do feel that we need to be cautious and err on the side of the safety of our members, our volunteers and our staff. We have been in touch with the Oxfordshire Community Foundation with a view to being better linked to the other charities in the county. And we see part of our role as educational, enabling other charities, such as food distributors, to be more aware of the particular needs of visually impaired people, both how they make them aware of their services and how they deliver them. I can't finish my report without referring again to the financial support we've received from individuals. During lockdown, I've visited the office only once a week. just to pick up the mail. Almost invariably, that mail has contained heartwarming letters of support and frequently generous gifts from individuals who believe in the importance of what we're doing. So thank you to all those individuals. However much or little you were able to contribute, every penny and your thoughts are so much appreciated. Looking ahead, I have found, is a difficult thing to get right. Nevertheless, I do look forward to the coming year and to working with the staff, trustees and volunteers, and with you who are here today, who are clearly our most loyal supporters. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Helen. I'll now like you, if you could, to take the chair for the election of trustees.
Yes, indeed. So I take the chair at this point so that we don't ever reach a point where Guy is responsible for presiding over his own re-election, but that's not this year anyway. Our Board of Trustees consists of 8 members. Professor Adrian Hill, our President, Guy Lawful, our Chair, Robin Birch, the Treasurer, Edward Pilling, Vice Chair, Simon Cruden, Gurjit Jutli, Yvonne Rainey and Margaret Simpson. That was in alphabetical order, not in any order of importance, Margaret. It's a requirement that 3 of the trustees stand down each year and present themselves for re-election. On this occasion, 3 trustees standing down are Simon Cruden, Edward Pilling and Yvonne Rainey, but all 3 have agreed to stand for re-election and have been proposed and seconded by members of OAB, so it remains for this meeting to vote on their re-election. Simon Cruden has been proposed by Mary Sitch and seconded by Colin Cure. Could I ask those in favour of Simon being re-elected to either show their hand like this or to press the raise your hand button at the top of their screen? Those in favour of Simon being re-elected. Tell me when you've got an answer, Mark.
Yeah, all good, thanks.
Okay. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Mark, is that carried?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Edward Pilling. Colin Cure has proposed that Edward be re-elected and Mary Gregory has seconded that. Could you please show if you are in favour of Edward being re-elected to the committee? All right, Mark?
Yeah, that's good, thank you.
Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, Mark. Is that carried?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. And then Yvonne Rainey, who has been proposed by Mary Gregory, seconded by Mary Sitch. Those in favour of Yvonne being re-elected, please. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. I can't see any hands abstaining or saying no. Mark, are all of those carried?
That's all good, thank you.
Thank you very much. The Board of Trustees therefore remains as it was, and I have pleasure in handing back to the Chair.
Thank you for that, Helen. We now move on to any other business. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up at this point?
I haven't got any comments in the comments field, so if people want to write anything in there,
Okay.
or people can unmute themselves if they dare to say anything, but we might, get a bit too much interference. So give it a go if you want to unmute yourself.
And if you have any questions to ask any of the trustees or staff.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yep.
Julian Bagwell here. We've obviously COVID's a very difficult time, and you've talked about really quite good news on the income front. Have you, and I know this is a very difficult question, have you got any idea of the financial position over the whole of the current financial year? Do you think we will be in surplus, or will we be drawing further on reserves?
Robin, would you mind taking that?
Of course. Yes, we have been taking a very close look at what may be needed for the rest of the present year. And we had a meeting of the Finance Committee followed by one of the board a few days ago, in which we took a view about incoming resources to date and what we needed to complete the year. And we, in broad terms, we've got about £103,000 in so far this year, and we reckon that we need about 100,000 on top of that. 201,000 is the figure we're looking at, but we would want to go a bit further than that, because our expectation is that expenditure will be something like 212,000 in the year. So there's quite a way to go, but that is work of 7 months. We've taken a specific view about how much we need to raise over that time. And I would not be too concerned about the possibility of achieving that. It's not the £300,000 of which Adrian spoke at the beginning, but it will be enough to enable us to do a good job. Does that help?
So I'm still not clear. Are you forecasting a surplus or a reserve at the end of the year?
I am forecasting that we will just about break even by the end of the year,
okay.
But that we should have 4 months reserves as part of that package that we get to. We'd like it to be 6 months. That is probably a little too much to achieve, unless the legacies all come in which case I suspect we shall do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions? Mark, have you got anything that's been requested?
We have a very nice comment from Margaret, which I will read out. I think we have another question here. Hang on a minute. So a nice comment from Margaret saying 3 very clear and positive reports. I'm very proud to be able to continue to support OAB, which is very nice.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
Okay, and so I've got a question here from Annette and Lottie, which says, would it be possible to think about using Zoom or Microsoft Teams to contact each other, library, book clubs or other interest groups, visual museums, talks or coffee mornings, etc.? I can sort of half answer that and say we're looking at different ways. We've certainly got telephone groups that are meeting at the moment, some regular, some not so regular, but we are hoping to do a few more Zoom socials in different aspects. One of our difficulties is we haven't got a huge take up on Zoom or Teams or online, so that's one of our challenges, is to actually get more people on board. But yeah, definitely looking at it. I don't know about the museums, Guy. Do you?
Could I add specifics about the museums? We are in discussion with Susan Griffiths from the Museums Outreach Service, and I think Lottie is aware of this. I think she's been involved in the conversations. They are looking to set something up. They don't know what form it's going to be taking, but now she is back from furlough, she will be looking into seeing what they can do in terms of running some of the tours virtually. And I understand that there is one already available for the Ashmolean, for specifically the Young Rembrandt exhibition, I believe. So does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, we got a comment saying thanks. I think it's just cut off on my screen. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it says lovely thanks from Annette and Lottie. There are no other questions on the comments, but again, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and say anything,
feel free.
You can do, if you can find your unmute button. I know on the telephone it is, I think if you press # and 5, I think you can unmute yourself.
No.
Hang on a minute. Sorry, there's things flying around on the screen here. A nice comment from Colin saying congratulations on all your hard work, everyone.
Thank you, Colin.
I think that's probably it, unless anybody else has any.
Okay, well, I shall close the meeting there. Unfortunately, we are unable to offer you tea and cake this afternoon. you'll need to provide that in your own homes if you wish to continue with that. But as far as we're concerned, that is the end of today's meeting. So thank you very much for your attending and for your continued support of OAB. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. It's been an excellent year. Thank you.